Communist China. We do a lot of trade with China, and China has a very rich history. But is Communist China, the government, a threat to the democratic ideals of our United States? Communist China invaded Tibet and destroyed almost all their places of worship, and they continue to select its own Buddhist priests as a way of slowly eliminating their religion. As Mao Zedong stated, religion is poison. Can you imagine if your religious leader was arrested and replaced by someone selected by politicians in Washington, D.C.? What else is Communist China doing? For one, they're constantly hacking into our institutions that exercise their freedom of the press, such as the New York Times. Many invasions have been traced back to this building in Shanghai, which is owned by the Chinese military. Chinese National Development Program relies on industrial espionage. Not just by internet hacking, but Chinese spies here in the United States. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce stated that we lose over $300 billion in intellectual property every year. And I can guarantee you that China is at the very forefront of these thefts. It gets much worse. Listen to what Michelle Von Cleve had to say. She was the head of U.S. counterintelligence from 2003 to 2006. She said, quote, "The Chinese, by espionage, acquired all of the U.S. nuclear design information for all our weapons currently in our inventory. All of them." Keep in mind that China is, among major world powers, the best friend of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is seeking nuclear weapons, and the absolutely insane government of North Korea, which already has nuclear weapons. In fact, without China, North Korea would not even exist. That's what the Korean War was all about. Unfortunately, it gets worse than this. A stealth aircraft with the option of vertical takeoff and landing. The F-35 is going to cost us between $500 billion and $1.5 trillion. It's the most expensive weapons program in the world ever. And if we lose the advantage of it, there is no alternative. There's no other next generation aircraft for us to rely on. If a single military weapons program is important to us, this is it. Some years ago, thousands of blueprints for the F-35 were stolen. Thereafter, China unveiled its next-generation aircraft, the J-31. They are the same damn thing. They've also stolen details of our Black Hawk weapons program, our Osprey weapons program, our drone programs, and dozens of others. It is true that currently the United States has the world's largest economy and the strongest military, but that's going to change. Everyone has their own projection, but the consensus is this. 2 to 5 years from now, China will overtake the United States as the world's largest economy. 5 to 15 years after that, the Chinese military will surpass that of the United States. No freedom of religion, speech, press, or representation. Industrial espionage costing us hundreds of billions of dollars. Theft of all our nuclear design information. Theft of our most important combat programs. And friends with Iran and North Korea. This is what Communist China represents in part, and it is soon to become the world's largest economy and the world's most powerful military. All nations use their economic and military power just by having it to influence the world beyond its borders. and what China represents and what the United States represents are two very, very different things. Yes, of course, we should continue fair trade with China, but the United States is more than just about making money, isn't it? I'm getting there. Now, God knows we're not perfect. That a scene like this, a starving child asking for money in this country, it's shameful. But ultimately, do we not constantly redefine ourselves as a nation, strive to refine the principles of freedom and justice? Are those not the fundamental principles that thousands of years of human history have led us to today? Communism, terrorism, corruption inside and outside of this country, and so many other forces constantly threaten what we hold so sacred, freedom and justice. If you believe that these principles are worth saving, then you must appreciate the need for us, the United States, to strengthen its relationships with its allies. Especially with the United States in decline, it's needed now more than ever. I propose to you that among all those allies, Japan is the most important. Let's look at the facts. Fact number one, Japan is a thriving democracy and has been for nearly 3/4 of a century. Based on the most recent elections, various independents and 10 different political parties represent the people of Japan in both the upper and lower houses of their Congress. They've had peaceful transitions of democratically elected administrations for almost 70 consecutive years now. In Asia, where 60% of the world's population lives, this is second only to Australia and New Zealand. They also enjoy full freedom of religion, full freedom of speech, and full freedom of the press. Fact number two, Japan is a major world economic power. After the United States, these are the next 10 economic powers in the world. Japan has the third largest economy in the world and the largest economy of all our allies. With economic power comes influence, and Japan and the United States working together have a much better chance of seeing democratic interests survive into the 22nd century. Fact number three, Japan is a major world military power. After the United States, these are the next 10 military powers in the world. You can see that Japan's military is as large as that of the United Kingdom and France. Now, in terms of military spending, they spend about 1% of their GDP, which is less than half of any of these other countries, which spend between 2 and 8% of their GDP on the military. Nevertheless, Japan's military is formidable. Fact number four, Japan is in Asia. More than half of the world lives in Asia, and more than half of the world's wealth and power will soon be in Asia. Strong democratic allies are needed in Asia, and Japan is the clear choice. Let's go back to our chart on economic power. Japan is the only ally listed here that is in Asia. India is a good friend, but they're a strategic partner, which is basically a step down from an ally. Plus, it's rife with corruption. Its level of democracy is not nearly sophisticated as that of Japan. If you look at South Korea and Australia, they're not even on this chart. They're great allies, but they simply don't have the economic power of Japan. So for today, right now, Japan is our strongest ally. Let's go back to our chart in military power. Again, Japan is the only ally listed here that is in Asia. If you look at Australia and South Korea, they're excellent allies, but they don't even come close. So for today, right now, Japan is our strongest ally. Yep. It's fair to say that Great Britain was our greatest ally of the 20th century, and they'll continue to be a close and important ally. But for the United States in the 21st century, it's Japan, for its highly functioning democracy, its economic power, its military power, and its location, Asia. I am not suggesting our other allies are not important. We all need each other if democratic principles are to survive into the 22nd century. But we as Americans need to recognize the importance of Japan. We need them as much as they need us. And so far, it's been a very one-sided relationship. The Japanese know a great deal about us and love the United States. But I'm embarrassed to say that my fellow citizens know very, very little about Japan. We cannot take this relationship for granted. So please, read up a little bit on Japan. They're our greatest ally. If we want to see this country and its principles and those of other democratic countries survive into the 22nd century, we need to strengthen our alliances. Thank you very much. I love all of you.